Hi, everyone. We are so glad to be back. It's Andi Mears and Dr. Melissa Sell. So we're going to be talking about nutrition because so many people have questions about how does nutrition fit into German New Medicine? What role does nutrition have? Because we're all taught you have to eat right in order to be healthy. And how many people do we know who eat right and they're not healthy? So what is right? Obviously that is not the solution. What is?
Yeah,
Melissa?
and that question
Yes.
is so important. How many diets have you heard of?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've done the GAPS and keto and paleo
Yes.
and raw
Yes.
vegan and Gerson, and I've
Yes.
done all, there are
Yes.
so many different diets, and that is a rabbit hole that unfortunately people like jump down and they try they go from extreme to extreme, from raw veganism to carnivore, and they're just trying to find out what's going to heal me. And when you're in the model of alternative health, food is looked at like top of like it's looked at
It's,
as the
yeah.
most important thing. And I believed and taught that for many years.
Yes. Me too.
The food that you're eating, that, I told people, if you eat this food, it's feeding cancer, it's causing cancer, it's damaging. This was the mindset I had, that it damages your genes. And so then your genes go rogue and they're not controlling the replication of cells anymore. And so because of all the bad food and toxins that you've imbibed, so this was kind of like this naughty thing that you did. Now there's damage, and now the cancer is just flourishing because it has a mind of its own. And so even that ideology, thinking in that way, you've got to look at your idea of like what happens when you put food in your mouth and in your body. Because if you think that there are wrong things that you can put in that can trigger the bad response called cancer, that idea has to fall away when you learn GNM. That was one of the biggest revolutions for me. That was just 2017. My mind was just blown wide open. I was like, whoa, the cancer is not a wrongness. It is not an error. It is not because you are not being punished for your bad diet, which is very freeing.
Exactly. I love that. It is very freeing. And I loved that you mentioned all those diets, because I too tried those. Vegetarian for over 2 decades, raw vegan, all these things. And it's like I was getting sicker and sicker and weaker and weaker. And I was certified in all of these. I was teaching them. It's like, what is going on here? What is the missing piece? If these are not helping me, then what are they doing? And so then when you learn German New Medicine, you go through this amazing, oh my gosh, it's not about the food. And so I would say from a GNM perspective, you can pretty much eat any diet you want. I mean, you've got to see how much energy do you have in your body? Do you have enough energy to do everything that you want to do? Because if you don't, you might want to shift your diet so that you can get more energy, especially if you're going through a PCL phase. If you're restoring and repairing your body, you need nutrients to do that. My nutrition has changed so much over the years. And what I tend to focus on now is what works for you, what feels good, and what kind of meaning are you assigning to your food? Oh, that's bad, that's wrong. Then that's going to be an issue for you. Gluten, you can't eat it. Oh my gosh, I've had people that didn't do gluten for 10 years, and then they did GAPS for 3 years, and then they did this diet and that diet, and they get tested all the time. And once we figured it out from a GNM perspective and they understood what was going on, they were eating gluten within 2 weeks and had no symptoms. So it's this amazing transformation that can happen very quickly that we don't realize. We're just on that bunny trail, like you mentioned, Melissa.
Yeah. And I think that, and a lot of times people have a very hard time accepting and understanding that, like, yes, the food is important. And so I do still think that food is very important. And I eat the cleanest food available. Learning GNM didn't cause me to like go eat fast food. I still have very high standards for the food I put in my body. I want things to be nourishing. I want them to be as close to nature as possible, not processed and added all kinds of chemicals. And so I eat very clean and very good. But it's it's the importance and the role that I believe nutrition plays. It's a supportive role.
Mhm.
It is a supportive role in your health. It is not a causative agent of disease. And so when you switch your understanding, you're still going to go for the cleanest food, the best food, the food that makes you feel good. And really you want to see how much, stress is my food choice causing me? Because a lot of people, they are racked with stress and worry and indigestible morsels about the food that they're eating because they're so conflicted, because they have differing stories in their mind. I tell this story often that it was 2009 and I had just read the book, the 80-10-10 diet book.
Oh yeah.
And I read it and it made perfect sense to me. And I was like, oh, we're supposed to be eating raw fruit and 80%, that's the way. And I did it for a whole 30 days. And then I read this other book and it was completely different. I was so conflicted. I had an upset stomach for like several weeks in this transition because everything I ate, there was a story in my mind about you shouldn't eat that. This is causing this. This is causing inflammation. This is, your body isn't designed to digest meat. And I was like, I don't know what to believe. And I couldn't hear the voice of my intuition, because your intuition really does know. And when you can trust yourself and trust your body and kind of get out all of the voices in your head from all of the lectures you've listened to and books that you've read, and like kind of go back to nature and say, what, my body, what does it want to eat? And some people will be like, well, my body wants to eat Doritos and Pepsi. And truly though, your body doesn't want that, and when you really tune in, you don't just throw out everything. And maybe you will have a Pepsi and Doritos every once in a while for something fun. And you don't think of it as a bad thing. You say, oh, that was a fun little vacation meal, but you realize how it makes you feel. You can sense the additives and the sugar spike, and you can feel when you are tuned in with yourself and your body, you won't go for the worst foods available. You tend to go for what your body actually needs. And like Andi was saying, when you are in a healing phase, your body needs nourishment. Your body is breaking things down, building things up. You want to be very well nourished, like the bone broth, the protein is so important, especially for the old brain activity, the old brain controlled tissue adaptations, because that tubercular bacteria needs protein.
Yes. And I think that's one of the hardest things a lot of people can face, because they're vegan, they're vegetarian. It's like, no, that I'm too spiritually evolved to eat that. And I certainly went down that path, and I was at one point a raw vegan. So I challenged this. I had a skin rash on my legs and I was trying to get rid of it, to detox it out. And I was raw vegan. I was losing weight rapidly. And I was not in a good space. There was a lot of stress in my life. And so I thought, I'm going to test this theory and see am I really detoxing this out of my body? This was way before knowing GNM. So I started on a Weston Price diet in one day, from being raw vegan for several months, and had been vegan for 6 years before that. And so I decided, tomorrow I'm going to eat meat. I hadn't had beef in 35 years. And all the beliefs about beef, oh my gosh, the saturated fat's going to kill me, and I'm killing these animals that I love, and all of that. So I bit the bullet. I got my Weston A. Price book out. I made bone broth. I got beef. I'd never bought beef as an adult because I gave it up as a teenager. And I'm in the store, at my local health food store. It's like, I don't know how to even buy this, but I did. And I cooked it up and I started eating it. And I was sure my body was simply going to reject it. And my body loved it. And so I had to go through all that stuff that you do. All those beliefs had to go by the wayside. And then I learned GNM. And everything changed yet again, realizing, okay, the diet is not healing me, and it wasn't hurting me, although it wasn't supporting me. And I needed a lot of support right then that I wasn't getting from my food. So that is important. And the endoderm programs, the old brain programs, there's protein loss. You need animal protein, and vegetarian plant protein won't cut it. It really won't cut it. So that's the one food rule in German New Medicine. old brain tissue with cell growth in the conflict active phase, cell breakdown in the PCL phase, you need to be eating animal protein to keep your energy up.
Now, one thing I did want to ask you, Andy, I had read somebody posted somewhere about Dr. Hammer possibly being into the blood type diet. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the blood type diet. I'm not familiar that he was into that. He was a vegetarian at one point later in his life, and he did believe in eating whole foods. He did not believe in additives or processed foods. He really preached that you need to be eating real foods, and that's really important to support the body's vital energy. He also did whole food supplements. So we know that he was into all of that. I hadn't heard about the blood diet though. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I
That
just
is,
heard someone mention it, and just thinking from a biological perspective that with your blood type, that it would make sense that potentially one diet would work for, one
yeah,
person over another. And that really, even just between my partner and I, the things he thrives on versus the thing, less carbs, less fat, more,
yeah,
more fat, depending on the person. And so that is where I think just really tuning into what works for you. Because even if Weston A.
yeah,
Price or some other diet sounds really good, if it doesn't jive with you, and even like Ayurveda and
yeah,
the different body types, paying attention to stuff like that, I think is really cool. But you want
yeah,
to see how much weight am I putting in the diet thing? Am I making it the be all end all of my health? Are you stressing yourself out about, I can't eat out? And I've told this story before about my skin, how I had this idea that I can't eat at restaurants because the bad oil causes inflammation and that causes acne breakouts. But it was when I ate that food, I felt soiled. And so the foods that made me feel soiled, I would get a breakout after, and it would seem so much like the food caused the problem. And I guess, even talking about tracks and how it seems as though you don't understand. No, the food causes my gastritis. It causes this rash to break out. And when you understand that it's not the food, because often, and most people realize this, was that there was a point in time where you were eating that food normally and then
right,
something happened and all of a sudden you couldn't have pineapple anymore. And we are interested in the something that happened, because at that moment that you have a conflict shock, your nervous system took a snapshot of this food profile and says, when this food or this substance or this odor comes into the experience, we have to reactivate the conflict as a preemptive protection and adaptation because of the shock that you experienced. And so, if you're still in that mind frame of, oh, this food causes my problem, you're going to need to kind of loosen your grip on that and look at what was going on in your life when this food became an issue.
absolutely. And you find that out, develop your timeline, what was happening. Oh, okay. Then you realize it's not about the food. It's about your psyche's association with that event. And your psyche's now saying, uh-oh, danger. You've had danger with eating this food. It's not about the food though. So you have to separate the food from the incident that happened, the distress you had when you were eating that food. So when you look at peanut butter allergies in kids these days, well, for quite a few years, what have we been feeding our kids? Well, peanut butter and sandwiches, right? Peanut butter and jelly. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of peanut butter and jelly. I mean, that just wasn't something that was super popular. And as it's become more popular, of course, there are more allergies and sensitivities because there are more conflicts felt when these kids are eating a peanut butter jelly sandwich and mom and dad are fighting, or something's happening around them that's distressing. And so their psyche is saying, uh-oh, danger. Not about the food, but about what's happening in their environment. So it's about unraveling all of that and just awareness. Awareness is the key to start that.